and welcome to this episode of season 6 of the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and today our very special guest Claire White, talk about different topics, including the world of online communications and digital inclusion, in a show which was the brainchild of digital storyteller, the late and much missed John Popham. So, as usual, we'll do a weather check at the beginning of the show. Sweyn, where are you, and how's the weather been this week?
I'm in Kirkwall in Orkney, and the weather has been cool, rainy, little bit of sunshine here and there, but we are not experiencing a heat wave in any way whatsoever at the moment.
Oh dear. And Claire, what about yourself? Where are you, and what's the weather like there?
In Stoke-on-Trent in England. It's ridiculously hot. I'm also next to a sunny window, which isn't the ideal place, but it's the easiest place to base myself. We've had 35, I think, not far from here today, and my car was showing
Wow.
41. So,
Oh, wow.
yes,
Hey.
mid-heat wave, I believe.
Yeah,
Great.
and here in the
Yes.
west of Ireland, I'm in Galway today. It has been very, very warm. I'm in sleeveless attire. Cooler in the building where I work. Now I'm back in the big sector, so there's a bit of coolness in the building. But yeah, outside very, very hot. I'm able to sleep at night though, so that's good. There's no issues with that. So we're very delighted to have you on the show, Claire, and a big welcome. We haven't had you on since COVID times, I think. So we've a lot to catch up on. But first of all, we'll cover some dates and an event actually that you've mentioned to us. So we'll cover those and then come back to you. Is that okay? Great.
Yes,
Swain.
I'm as usual. I've got a complete mess of tabs on my laptop here, and I have chosen a couple of days, however, the first of which
Mm-hmm.
is Global Energy Independence Day. And I've chosen this because it's a topic quite close to my heart, and a very important one, I think. And it's observed on the 10th of July every year to promote renewable energy sources in order to make the global economy less dependent on fossil fuels. That's coal, oil, and natural gas.
Mm,
Of course, it's impossible to imagine the modern world without electricity, and over 80% of the primary energy consumption of the world is still from fossil fuels. Um, and although they've been important to human development for a couple of hundred years, they've obviously got drawbacks in terms of carbon emissions and so on. So the need to reduce carbon emissions and also to mitigate climate change and achieve energy security is really important. And the process that has come into being is known as the energy transition to replace fossil fuels with renewable sources of energy such as solar, wind, hydropower, bioenergy, and geothermal energy. So there's lots
mm,
going on in those fields, and
mm-hmm.
various countries are doing variously well or badly at getting on with it. So
Yeah.
that's Global Energy Independence Day. And the other date that I've chosen is World Population Day, which is the United Nations Day, um, and it's seeking to focus attention on the urgency and importance of population issues. It was established in 1989 by decision of the United Nations, and it was an outgrowth of the interest generated by the Day of 5 billion, which was observed on the day that the world population was thought to reach that milestone on the 11th of July, 1987.
Mm,
So the United Nations decided to carry on observing World Population Day to enhance awareness of population issues, including their relations to the environment and development. It's been observed in more than 90 countries, and its kind of sponsor UN body is the United Nations Population Fund, whose one of whose most important uh, functions is to um, work on family planning and the availability of that to people throughout the world.
mm,
And in that work, they have 9 standards which they try and hold to, which include non-discrimination. Family services shouldn't be restricted on the basis of race, sex, religion, language, political affiliation, or any other characteristic. Availability, countries should ensure that family planning accommodates and family planning commodities and services are accessible to everyone. That it's accessible, in other words, people, as well as services being available, that people can actually access them, and acceptable to the various populations and cultures across the world. There should be of good quality. Decision making should be informed by the people looking to undertake family planning, and there should be privacy and confidentiality. There should be participation by population of countries in designing services, and there should be accountability for health services and for education systems. Really, things that are basic to any kind of health service, and that's World Population Day. I seem to be stuttering a lot today. I'm sorry about that. I'll stop now.
Okay. And we have 2 events. One which Claire has brought to our attention, and that's on Sunday, the 25th of July, an event called Spirit in the Woods, Wild Spirit Woods. And the blurb says, "We are kindred. People have been walking, watching, and making meaning in this landscape for thousands of years. You're invited to come and be part of that at Wild Spirit Woods, to listen to stories of congletons, bells, and bears, and learn about how the UK was part of a wider ancient European tradition stretching back thousands of years. You're invited to leave a biodegradable wish, thought, or memory on the blessing tree, to step into the teepee for a moment of guided rest and get a glimpse of how we once lived out in the woods. To enjoy a cuppa and time to simply be in the woods. The organisers are saying there's no set start time, stay for as long as little as you like. There will be display and hands-on activity, and the event is family friendly. And the site is in rural countryside, sited near quarrymen's cottages, with a history of farming and industry evident on site. The ancient Neolithic Bridestones chamber is not far away. So that sounds like a very happy and joyful thing to be part of towards the end of July. And one other thing I picked up, we like to pick up, the kind of things that the 3 of us have been helping people to get online and do things online for many years, which is how we kind of cross each other, I think, in the first place. And this is on the 12th of August in Clackmanor, Skills for Volunteers, learning how to use Canva 101. And it's for volunteer involving organizations. And the blurb says, whether you're a social media volunteer, the trustee in charge of communications, or are just looking to add more skills to your volunteering CV, this session will take you through all the need to knows about Canva to ensure that you and your organization are getting the most out of it. The digital communications assistant for the organization organizing this will take you through the most of Canva, through making the most of Canva. And you're welcome to just sit and absorb or bring along your own device to have a go in real time. And this is an event for volunteers of the organisation CTSI. If you're not sure, if you remember, there's an email address so you can follow up and check if you can go to it. But it's just great to see this kind of thing still happening. Kind of thing John encouraged and supported. And we love to see things still happening that were important to him. And so, without further ado, I'm just scrolling down on my screen again. We welcome our guest, very special guest, Claire White. Claire, thanks for joining us today. I'll read out your very impressive biography and some of the differences that you made, because you're really bringing a lot to the show. So, following careers in journalism, social media training, and adult learning, Claire White is now firmly entrenched in the wild frontiers of the gig economy. She currently works in 3 main areas. Contractor for a large global AI training agency, Claire is part of a very large global team of freelancers that help large AI models improve through a process called reinforcement learning from human feedback. Secondly, she works as a teaching assistant with 2 agencies in and around North Staffordshire, mainly with nursery and primary age children. And every now and then, thirdly, a third string to her bow, as a supporting artist on film sets around the Midlands and north of England. Claire has worked on 4 major feature films so far. and is looking forward to a fifth this summer. She has given us some links to include in our show notes, which includes an introductory course to AI training work, a useful article reflecting a lot of her own experience over the last couple of years, and one for geeks that was shared in one of the what are called the task group communities. She says that trainers tend to be called experts internally and generalists in some of the job ads, and over the years also taskers, because I think that's what one of the websites are called, work gig economy type companies. Um, she's recommending some companies where people can look for this type of work. But she also recommends that people look up the companies and also ask maybe on Reddit, for example, for people's opinions about working in these kind of places. It's just a kind of a word to kind of be careful and be well informed when you're looking for work like this. Claire is a proud lifelong trade unionist and highly recommends membership, whatever kind of work or none that you do. She's currently a member of BETU, which represents various creative industries, including artists, and Unite as a community member. And she also provides links on the resource front for the TUC, which helps people to decide what trade union is the most appropriate for their field of work. She's also a volunteer consultant for a Wild Spirit Wood CIC. That was the event that we mentioned earlier, an organisation led by people with various disabilities that nurtures a piece of woodland on the border of Staffordshire and Cheshire, working with deep respect for its heritage and resident trees, plants and animals. And that's where I got the details of the event from. So without further ado, Claire, you're very welcome to the show. We're so delighted to have you back with us again.
Thank you.
For joining us.
I didn't mention as well that I also have two children. One is new since the last time I was on the show, and she's sitting here. She's pretty much spent much of her life below the line of the Zoom screen, so she's very used to me being on meetings, and she's 5 now. So
right.
yeah, she is.
Yeah.
You've just turned 5, haven't you? So so yeah, and it was funny. I just said to Sweyn I didn't dare look back at the last time I was on, but it was funny because I could instantly see where I was and what I was doing, and it's there's a lot of change for everybody, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you seem to have expanded your horizons very much. I mean, you always were kind of interested in new things, and when we were talking about you coming on the show, was talking to you, in the last couple of weeks. You said something about the kind of people we are is kind of unconference type people. That's where you meet people at unconference people who have that kind of mindset, growth and development and encouragement and all that. So it's great to have you bringing all that to the show today.
No, it's been hard though. I would say that the last 10 years or so have been really rocky in terms of the changes in work and the changes in everything. It's interesting how much, I suppose all of us were early adopters, and it's probably getting on for 20 odd years since we met and were running around trying to sell Twitter to people and stuff like that. And it's fascinating. I'm sure you've felt this, to see the different effects the mass adoption has had and the kind of good and bad of that, and to then reflect on, sort of, has it always come out how we might have wanted it to? Have the good things come? Have the bad things come? And definitely all of those things.
Absolutely. My most recent job in the charity world is around digital inclusion, but I ran a session at a bit tongue in cheek, but not completely. I ran a session at UK GovCamp in January in Birmingham, saying digital inclusion is a con because it has been used to not maybe not deny people services, but certainly to cut down on the amount of face-to-face contact people have with people in certain institutions. It's big to save money. It maybe hasn't achieved the kind of the community building that maybe some people thought it was going to do. You know, it has connected some people with each other, but
I
you know, to some
think
extent, I think it's not
I
all
think
that.
I think there are developments that happened almost without those of us who were really interested in inclusion, you know, because
Mm,
breakthroughs like I suppose the mass adoption of Facebook, for example, and older generations getting onto Facebook,
mm,
and kind of I remember the first time people started sort of spinning off their own groups that then became massive.
yeah.
And they just did that out of a drive to communicate, and they've become kind of the old villages, really. And then also the sort of the COVID thing, which meant, I mean, I think when I was last on the show, I'd been training lots of tutors. I was involved in the training
Mm,
team of, you know, suddenly we had no choice but to teach online and for people to learn online. And it was,
mm,
I've had the chance to do a bit of reflection on it through a master's, and on how hard it was, but also how it was probably the only opportunity we would ever have had to have
yeah,
made that breakthrough,
yeah,
because actually everyone was at home. In our case, it was fortunate that people were paid to do some learning and training. But where you're absolutely right is the inequalities, and we saw this coming. The inequalities have just expanded enormously. So I think if you, where I feel like I've been fortunate in a lot of ways is that if you were confident and if you had the sort of resources to begin with, you've been able to keep up.
yeah.
The people now, I'm sure you'll know the statistics. I think you've quoted them. Scarlett, do you think you can sing somewhere else? Do you think? Where we there are still a percentage of people who aren't even on smartphones, and most of
Yeah,
us have them in our family, and you know that's despite their best efforts and constant efforts
yeah,
to sort of try and learn. Um, so even those of us who are sort of early adopters have been overwhelmed at times.
yeah,
I
yeah.
certainly have. I've had
Mm,
phases where I've just been completely shut down by developments that I can't keep, all of that. And then, but then the aspect that I would also highlight, which picks up on the change in terms of what I've been doing, has been the sort of fragmentation of adult learning. And I think
mm,
that's a real missed opportunity,
mm,
because there still, despite everything, hasn't been adequate recognition, really, that in order to close the gaps, people need to be confident. And it's not just
yeah,
IT training, it's exactly
yeah,
what a number of us were doing a long time ago. You know, it's anything that brings people together and just gets them playing. And
yeah,
once you've been in a room with people and you're able to get confident on something, or just to learn that it exists and see what benefits it has, then you can go off and do it. But
yeah,
if you don't get those chances, and for me, I think one of the hardest things for me to deal with in the last 11 years or so was just seeing that, what's the kind of word, the sort of communal learning just collapse.
mm,
And so it wasn't just the funding of adult education that declined, it was everything, everywhere that supported people together.
yeah,
It was, and in one sense, it was interesting because COVID kind of created that final, like, obviously everything shut, but it did create then opportunities for people to come together remotely and start working together in ways that they couldn't. So it's been this constant thing where everything's really good and really bad at the same time. And
yeah,
we've all been
yeah,
trying to kind of keep up with that. But yeah, I did some academic stuff since I last saw all of you. And I use it sometimes in social media because I think it's an interesting concept. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which was kind of predicted as in sort of systems and management type theories. But it's the era that we're
yeah,
in. It's,
yeah,
it's AI becoming what people sort of predicted and also doing things that people didn't predict,
mm,
with all the good and bad things that brings. It's the political uncertainty, it's, major isolation despite the possibility of being connected. It's all these contradictions that we have to get our heads around. So yeah, it's tough.
The COVID, one of the missed opportunities during COVID was that our sector, the non-profit sector, as I still think of myself as coming from, didn't have the baseline infrastructure in order to be able to support people to adapt to life online and still retain all the great things there are about working in voluntary organizations, the community, the networking, the helping each other, the kind of the personal things that make life worth living, whereas statutory organizations, public sector organizations and businesses want people to use technology so they can make more money out of them, or make them use less resources in the public sector frame. Then the voluntary sector were always the ones that money didn't come first, people came first, and whatever could be afforded, happened out of that, and I think there's a lost opportunity. And now I see people talking about digital inclusion, companies, private sector companies talking about it, and they're not talking about community and bringing people together. They're talking about the economics of it, and making making things more profitable. And it just breaks my heart, because it's no, we don't want to go in that direction. And then AI, let's talk about AI and your kind of take on that, and people getting work in it as well, and what the opportunities are there, if any.
Yeah, so I'll probably start by saying, sorry, Scarlett, my daughter's just running her fan right next to the laptop, so if I move away slightly, she might buzz a bit less. So I started exploring this stuff about 2 years ago, when my charity job was put at risk, and it was obviously starting to think about this sort of what next question. And it's taken me this long. Only about 6 weeks ago did I actually get work that was paid, properly paid. But it was, and it was, again, it was a bit of a roller coaster, because I thought I'd cracked it. I thought I'd found this great new vein of work that was going to kind of save me, because it was completely remote. It was the work for those who've been involved in journalism, or the kind of graphics, IT, technology, all those things that have required quite close attention to detail. It's good work. And obviously I can say a bit more about what it involves, but I felt like it was going to be great, because obviously I had the children. I'd been fortunate enough to have a job that was quite flexible. I wanted to keep that kind of flexibility going. The question was going to be how to make a living in that world. And I got a bit burned, and an experience that echoes this is in the article that I've shared. And I'm guessing that's because it was quite common. And so it was my first experience within an organization where, it's completely global, completely different in terms of, expectations of work. So I got on okay in terms of, getting on with the work, understanding what it was, understanding, because a lot of it isn't that different for any remote organization, lots of chats, lots of documents, lots of people trying to get their heads around what's going on. But I did a maybe 20 odd hours, and was like, yes, this is good, this is great. I can do this anytime I want. I can get up early in the morning, I can do this when people are asleep or whatever. This is good. And then suddenly I just got a message saying, you've broken the rules, basically. And you can no longer work for us. You've been cut off from all the channels. There is no grounds for appeal. And it was, obviously, as I've said in my supporting information, I've kept an eye on Reddit and the communities on Reddit, where you get a good heads up about things that can go well and go wrong. So this wasn't unusual to me, but obviously I still had that sense of, well, surely there are ways at least to find out what I've done wrong, because from a learning point of view, you want to know that, obviously, because you expect organizations to have invested in people, and then, well, you don't expect that. Okay, I wasn't naive, but you'd think that that would make sense. Whereas actually, it seemed a bit like the churn of people was part of the industry, because people are completely disposable in that world. And it was about the same time there was a bit in media about really AI training being kind of factories, in the worst possible sense. So children working wherever they could in the world, as long as they could get a stable connection, they could work. And it was, the kind of work that you see when you do your capture thing. So,
Yeah.
it's basically training the computer in terms of what photographs are and things like that. So the work that I got was needed English language skills,
Mm.
but it was still minimum wage. And the point was that as long as you could get to grips with it, you could do it for so many hours. And then you'd hear these stories, and you still hear them about, it wasn't just the gig workers, it was all the staff. So an entire layer of management just fired by email, cut off their systems because they'd found a cheaper department in an entirely different country. So I suppose I just kept to watch on the industry. So I got nowhere with this company. There was no way to appeal. There was no way to get information. It was completely that was it. That door was closed. But I kept kind of keeping an eye on it, applying for different companies. I probably had 3 or 4 applications that had kind of been put in the pipeline. I was chasing different things. I developed the schools work because it was the most sort of stable thing.
Yeah.
And so I was doing plenty of that. And then suddenly I got an email out of the blue basically saying, we've used your previous application. Uh, if you want to do this piece of work, we'd encourage you to apply for it. And within a few days, I was sort of in and onboarded. I haven't worked in something as big and commercial like this, and non-profit like you, journalism,
Mm.
where, there used to be resources in journalism, but it was like freebies rather than
Yeah.
actual cash. Now it's that world. And honestly, I feel weird about recommending this stuff to people
Mm.
because it feels, you start to feel a bit like the same people who are running pyramid schemes and
Yeah. Yeah.
MLMs and all that sort of stuff, where it's like, so you can get money for referring people and for the work that they then do, and but I've tentatively sort of started testing the water. I think that's how
Yeah.
you picked up I was doing this, because genuinely first few days I was like, yeah, this is good. I like
Mm.
this work. This suits me.
Mm.
It's an hour or 45 minutes or 2 hours max. And it's concentrated.
Mm.
So, it was nice, and I knew that other people would be able to do the work,
So
Yeah.
and that there were
can
hundreds
you
of
just
people.
describe?
Take a step back and describe what it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
So,
it's
the AI training work is that terminology is reinforced human learning. So if you think, and there's another good article about this, which is lots of people have come to the conclusion that generative AI is a bit like autocorrect. So it's one word after another after another. Now, there is an element of that, but the much more sophisticated aspect of it is that these models are being built, and then humans are training up the models through this process of reinforcement. So it's tending to be, and there are parallels in this with education, obviously, with people or with animals as well, where you start by showing them, and then you're basically ranking what's good and bad. So if you think of the normal chatbots that you'll be using all the time now, you are critiquing all the time, giving things ratings and rankings and comparing maybe 3 or 4 responses. And it's about the computer learning then what's good, what's bad, and just getting better and better. So it's a bit different, I think, from what the slightly, I suppose, uh, what a lot of people now think that AI is that vast amounts of data has been scraped from the internet and is being spat back at us.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some aspects of truth in that, but I think what that neglects a little bit now is that actually it's more about humans either building the data sets or teaching the models how to work with data.
Mm.
So, and a real area of interest for me is the ethics side. Because obviously I come from the creative sectors and I come from areas where we're all concerned about jobs being taken. So, and this was what I found most interesting in the first job that I did, because the very first thing that you're trained to do is to think about the ethics of what the model
Mm.
is doing. So I
Mm.
think, this is going back now a couple of years, and this is some of the tools that we now see live, where where it goes against some of the things that we think of. Um, um, where we think of it as the machine will just go do whatever it wants. So in fact, we were trained in like 5 or 6 key rules, and it was it's like what's that? The film or the kind of the computer should do no harm. It should not. It should not make up information. It should
Isaac
not.
Asimov's rules of laws of robotics.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
yes,
right.
yes.
Yes,
I Robot.
yeah. So it's yeah, exactly. The do no
Mm.
harm
I
thing
robot. Yeah.
is well known, isn't it?
Mm.
So there's
Mm.
elements of that where you're essentially giving the model guardrails, and then
Mm.
the detailed work is about checking that. So and so where I think obviously the ethics is really complicated, but there's aspects of that where it's thinking about, okay, so how can we improve the behavior? How do we make sure that this doesn't do bad stuff? That's an area that's fascinating. And as long as people are willing to pay people to do that, that's great, I
Yeah.
think. Then the other aspect that's fascinating is that, again, I'm thinking from the sort of voluntary sector, local authority type sectors, these aren't replacing jobs. The AIs are not replacing jobs if you consider that nobody was paying people to do those jobs. So when I
Mm.
think of the job that I was doing shortly before, the lateral structure that I got through, it was enormous. And
Mm.
and like everybody, you're doing everything. You're expected to be able to do the graphics, the IT, and that's where, we've all worked with lots of people whose confidence has really suffered.
Mm.
And it's not just on the technical side, it's the HR,
Yeah.
it's the navigating remote working, it's um, you know, loads and loads of compliance or laws or rules or training things, and everyone from volunteer through to manager is having to navigate so much of this stuff.
Mm.
So just trying to give an example without breaking any of the terms that I've signed up to, but there are pieces of work now that we are getting these tools to do for us. And I really, really am hopeful that people's jobs can get better because of
Mm.
some of these tools.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's gone back to, it feels to me like when I first started my career, I was doing sub-editing.
Mm.
So it was very much the same. It was working with
Mm.
groups of journalists. And just and the nice bit we had in one piece of guidance was, you can be as picky as you want. You're not going to hurt the robot's feelings. And that was really liberating. Because
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
in journalism it was taken for granted. On newspapers, it was always very robust and,
Mm.
you'd have that back and forth. Whereas in the charity sector, it could be really, really hard to
Mm.
have those conversations. And I guess that became increasingly hard for me, where you were trying to kind of cover every expectation, every requirement with human beings who are just doing their best. Now, when you're looking at it from the point of view of a model being asked to do something very specific, it's
Mm.
great because the job is to be really, really picky. And sorry, Sweyn, hopefully I've answered the question at some point. In terms of what you do and how to be good at this job, the way I've described it to people is you just have to be really good at taking in a massive amount of written information and then understanding how it should be applied and doing it quickly. And the other big element is to just be very, very okay with change.
Yeah.
So the requirements are changing all the time. Now, there's no point being the person who kind of complains about that change and resists it, because actually the projects have moved on. So
Mm.
there's just no point. Now, the fortunate thing about this, now I will say
And
this,
I
I'll
think
let you get in.
if people are interested in the nuts and bolts of it, I think the article that you've um, suggested, which is called "What is AI Training? The
Yeah,
Complete Beginner's Guide," is probably a good place to
yes.
start. But that'll be in the show notes for people to.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I think that's a great starting point, because you almost have to see the work, and the problem is you can't see the work that easily, but that gives you a really good idea of what it is and what it looks like. And if you're somebody who's worked with lots of written text or with images, it's, it won't be too unfamiliar to people. And I guess rating and ranking has become much more common. Giving things a number to understand how good it is isn't that unfamiliar to people anymore.
No,
But it's
no.
complex, and
Yeah.
you have to be quite on the ball and focused. It's the most
Mm.
desk work I've done in years. I've had
Mm.
to really like get my eyesight back, get my screen set up again. Again, on a practical level, I've said to people, do not try it on anything other than a good laptop with a good keyboard, and improve your typing speed. There's practical things that,
Yeah.
again, are kind of old skills. Set up your workstation properly.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about what I'm doing now, and again, I'm not, that's why I sort of haven't mentioned the specifics, because I'm not trying to sell anything specific here, but the pay is really good. And that's actually the
It's
most
always nice to
remarkable
hear.
bit about it for me,
Mm.
because I got used to it being something of, okay, this is another thing I can do to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
I don't mind, like you said at the beginning, I'm doing a variety of things that are all things I'm interested in and passionate about, which is lovely for me.
Mm. Mm.
But a lot of them have been minimum wage,
Mm.
and they've also been, the nature of them is that you can't predict them. So if the work's not there, there's nothing you can do except
Mm.
wait. And I've got
Mm.
3 areas of work now that are all like that, and it's quite funny, because in a virtual sense, the AI stuff is a lot like, a lot of us kind of compare it to turning up at the dock gates or turning up at the studio and waving and saying, is there any work today? We
Mm.
we literally have to fish for the work. And I think, oh, I don't think I've sent it yet, because I couldn't find it, but I'll send it for you to include in. There's something where someone's reflecting on recent experience, and they've used that metaphor as well. And it's a
Mm.
good one, because I suppose it reflects where we are in terms of industries as well now,
Mm.
where you be, being able to put yourself in a position where you're ready to take the work is a luxury.
Mm.
And it wasn't a luxury that I could afford myself for all those years when I was kind of keeping the stable job, the monthly salary. So I was really
Mm.
anxious about losing that.
Mm.
And I've been anxious about losing that since. Being freelance is terrifying, really.
Mm. Yeah.
And as a result, it does, we go back to the inequality thing. It tends to be done by people with privilege. Now, the beauty of the work I'm doing now is, I didn't expect to get any work in half term when the kids were off,
Mm.
because
Mm.
obviously I wasn't putting myself forward for the agency work. So there's a bit of holiday pay built in, like there is temping, but that's it. This is actual good money. So I'm
Mm.
sending this to people, and the people who have different qualifications are offered different rates. So I've got, and the technology is unbelievable if you've worked for a charity.
Mm.
I can see some of this process now. So I can see what people are being offered and what they're getting and
Mm.
where they are in
Mm.
the process.
Mm.
And the other good thing about it, and again, I'd compare this to the supporting artist stuff, the extra work. You don't have to network for it. You have
Mm.
to turn up and be competent and good at what you do.
Mm.
Which, given the huge range of things that AI is interested in and involved in,
Mm.
is everything. So
Mm.
I see people now who are what I'd consider to be specialists in their field. And
Yeah.
I know, so think about working class communities. People have the best eye for detail, and they can see something that's AI generated and it's bad. They can see the
Mm.
flaws and things, and that
Mm.
is exactly what you need actually for this sort of work,
Right.
because it can do 99% of things really well. But it's like the cliche has become the M dash now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, and there's an article I also shared about fonts where, it can do a lot very well, but I suppose as a population, a lot of us, or as a society, a lot of us are picking at the things it does badly and focusing on that. And
Mm,
then there's people who are focusing in on what it does well and becoming evangelists or just going off down rabbit holes where it will do everything for them. And we need a balance, and we need critical thinking skills.
yeah.
That is fundamental. And that's why I come back to adult learning, because it's not
Mm,
even tech skills anymore. It goes back to
yeah.
the skills we need
Yeah.
to judge whether something's true or not.
So are there networks like, when we were doing social media surgeries and so on, there were always people you could network with, people you'd refer to by name because you'd know them. Oh, so and so was a good person to talk to. I'd be now recommending to say to people, if you're not following Claire White on LinkedIn, then start because she's got a lot of good things to say.
Yeah, and I
Are there other
suppose
people you're around?
um, I'm just trying to think. I think I was the only person I knew who'd got into this
Hmm.
at the time. So I've learned all of it just from anonymous forums on Reddit and stuff that I picked up online.
Hmm.
Um, I'm sure there are people starting to pick up on it now. People I've spoken to, quite a few are in the similar position to me where,
Hmm.
they've applied for things because obviously it's being advertised quite heavily, a lot of these
Yeah.
companies. So, but it doesn't have that same external network. I've started making colleagues now, and some
Hmm.
of those are really good people. And it's
Yeah.
become this thing where you sort of sneak a water cooler moment amongst the talk about, how do you do this task and what do you do this? And somebody shares a good tip, and a few people were impressed at how I. One of the brilliant things about this area of work is that they're using the AI really well.
Hmm.
So you know how you've all been on online communities and there's a million people asking the same questions.
Yeah.
You can just tag a robot. And so you're almost teaching people as you go along. But it's been nice because we're working across all time zones.
Hmm.
And I mean, I made a joke about uh oh, I've tried to log on when all the Americans are asleep. And of course, you've got to be careful with that kind of joke because not some Americans found it funny, and others were like, "We don't sleep. How dare you? We're doing nights like every." And I'm like, "I was just joking. Sorry, I wasn't trying to tell you how to sleep. I
Yeah.
mean, in the run up to Independence Day, I'm not going to tell you when to sleep." But it's nice because you get. I've started making that sort of network, and
Hmm.
as I say, Reddit, because Reddit is anonymous,
Yeah.
people can probably share. It's more of a community of practice out in the outside world than anything else can be because you actually can't share the detail outside of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
community. And people are very careful. Obviously,
Hmm.
again, you need to understand the rules that you're
Yeah.
working within, and as long as you can follow them,
Hmm.
it works really well. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm hoping to come to your thing in November. And I would love to
Into baby
talk to
camp.
other
Yeah.
people. I think for me, what has started, and I'm very early stages of this, is there is something about this becoming the work of the future. And
Hmm.
of course, we might say, well, there will come a time when the robots know everything and there'll be no more training to do. But
Hmm.
I'm not convinced that there won't ever be a need. And if it's not about actual hourly paid sessional training work, which is nice because of the flexibility it gives you, then it will also be about, well, how do we use AI in our lives? And I suppose that's a more mainstream conversation,
Hmm.
is that people have to understand, just like, people had to learn what it is to be making public comments for the first time. We
Yeah.
have to learn how to tune things, how to learn what to trust, how to
Yeah.
use it efficiently and effectively, and all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. So I'm interested in that. I suppose there is that wave. I think one of the huge risks, I suppose this touches on the work that the two of you have done and others in this network, is the huge risk is that AI has just been unleashed. I mean, I
Hmm.
remember when Copilot was just switched on, and I think I asked somebody in the organization, well, what are the policies to support this? So you have to,
Yes.
like you always had, you have two sets of people, the people who won't touch you with a barge pole
Mm.
ever, no matter
Yeah.
how much permission they're given, and then the people who will just go off on one. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we haven't,
There's
I
an
don't think
interesting
we've,
comment you make about Copilot there because in one of my part-time jobs, which I'll not mention what it is, but it's it's a public service where the job is really pretty much dealing with people on a day-to-day basis, including lots of confidential information about them. And our internet suddenly said, "We've got Copilot now. We can use it for anything we want, but don't use it for don't use it for personal information. Don't use it for confidential." And you begin to think, well, how many people have read the caveats?
Exactly.
And when you take all the caveats out of what we do, what's left? What are we allowed to use it for?
And even that, I mean, I'm surprised we haven't seen a lot more of it, because even on the sort of efficiency front, you would expect people to start feeding in their databases or feeding in things and saying, can you just look at, if people have got an assistant that's called an assistant, there is no, and I've from the safeguarding and GDPR type training that I do, there is no way it's caught up with this stuff.
No.
And that's
very benign, calling it an assistant, very, very negligible, very sort of smooth, very, we want more scary titles with these things while people are learning and building confidence.
I think also part of what I was just complaining about there is that all organizations have a kind of corporate core who support the operational side and who aren't dealing with the day-to-day confidential stuff. They're writing presentations for each other and for partner agencies and so on. And I think part of it could be that a lot of what gets out into the whole organization, or in some organizations, is this view from a kind of corporate managerial type center, which doesn't quite properly connect with what the actual mission of the organization is in terms of being careful with GDPR, confidentiality, and so on.
It's incredibly mixed up, and you've seen this in universities. There's a huge sort of dissonance between the blanket message of don't use AI, and of course we've seen everything's built by AI. And so it must be pretty tough if you're in that generation going, oh, well, what do you mean then? Like, which is it?
It's tough for the students. It's also tough for this generation of academics who are trying to cope with this sudden, absolute category change of what they're asked to deal with.
What I'm concerned about is things like, Rachel Caldicott writes about let's kind of prioritize or make more of the fact of help 8 billion people, not 8 billionaires. That's her kind of one of her strap lines. It's not exactly right, but it's near as I can get it. And so when I think of AI and the companies that build it and promote it and stuff, to me their priority is to make money. To make money for these billionaires. So if their priority is making money, then the work that you're doing, Claire, ultimately, it feels to me, I'm just asking this now, it feels to me like eventually they want to put you out of a job so that, to get everything they can get you to do everything that you can for them. And then but eventually they'll say, no, you're no good to us anymore. And they'll cut you off like previous companies have done.
It's definitely a major source of anxiety, and I think we all feel it, whether or not that experience has been directly within AI or not. That it's perhaps more common across the whole economy, though, and it's that anxiety that everything is short term, and it's and again, I suppose going back to the sort of there's a kind of mental health side of this, in that you can either embrace that uncertainty or it can really terrify you. So it's like the levels of anxiety that people had with technology 20 years ago has heightened because of that thing of, well, is this actually going to take my job? But it's a little bit like that idea of within charity sectors, the kind of suspicion that people would keep the problem to the extent that they could keep their jobs. So I suppose for me, there's a satisfaction in seeing computers do stuff really well. To be able to have even the tiniest little fragment of an understanding of saying, right, you can do this better through this way, and then looking at some of the output a short while later and go, oh my God, that's magic. That's
mm,
remarkable.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I guess as human beings, we've just got to constantly keep an eye on the power dynamic of it and
yeah,
understand what that ownership structure looks like. Because, so for example, there's things for me where I remember being a postgrad student remote during lockdown, and you know, what I can now do with some of the AI tools to combine research information is unbelievable. You know, what
mm,
I just do instead of a search now is
yeah,
unbelievable
yeah,
because you've suddenly got these huge libraries of information. And we thought that with Google when Google first came. It was like, wow, this is incredible. Now you've got that ability to combine and to guide the way the search works. And if you've got the knowledge, you can start to question and challenge the AI, give it rules, give it,
mm,
I don't want you to give me the answer that you think I want and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Um, so I suppose from my point of view, it always was me thinking, well, if this is a way in for me, because I've always been somebody who's interested in technology without having, programming or high
yeah,
level hard skills. It's
mm,
an
yeah,
interest in how it works,
mm,
and how it can work better. And so to be able to have a role within that for me is ace. And
mm,
if out of that, the main thing is that I can then take that with me because I've got a sense of how the architecture of the whole thing works a bit better,
mm,
then that's cool. I think the positive is, and again, this is very hidden, I think, in the media. The investment now that is going into human involvement, and it is absolutely a sort of gig economy, mass kind of thing. Um, you know, 0 hours contracts. I don't doubt they use that term across the whole world. But it is about human expertise, and I think you can see from that how the cooperation can work. And going back to kind of where AI fits within organizations, that kind of really interesting conversation about how work can genuinely get better. There's
mm,
something about that. I mean, you two have got to that sort of point, and I get when I knew that I was going to lose the charity job I had, I always thought, well, at some point I'm going to have to go commute somewhere else.
mm,
Now, to be able to, it's all been about figuring out how to make a living kind of where you are. And if
mm,
we can, for me, some of the interest now, going back to the education side, is how can we raise people, including adults, in this society that's so significantly different? And how can we make sure that people are getting access to well-paid work?
yeah,
That
Because
sounds like
we
a
know
very
that that's been massively impacted. I mean, there's a good parallel now in driverless
hello.
cars.
mm, mm,
Where, again, that's going to have a huge impact on drivers.
Mm,
mm,
But then there's a whole interesting thing there about safety
mhm.
and about
mm,
how you can be in a driverless car now as a care worker and doing your paperwork,
yeah,
or you can be someone without a
yeah,
driving license who can accompany children to school.
Yeah.
mm,
And
mm,
so we need a more nuanced debate, I think, where yes, all the bad things are true, and yes, all the good things are true. And I
mm,
get frustrated when people generalize about AI
Mm,
now,
yeah,
mm.
partly
yeah,
because I think, well, surely Google was an algorithm. Like, what exactly do we mean when we're talking about AI?
I get that. I that's
Machines.
I'm glad you said that because you get stories that AI is being used in some to do some task, and you think, well, is that AI or is that an algorithmic kind of thing that
Yeah.
in the past we would have just called, I don't know, digital,
mm,
electronic, or new?
Yeah, and that's it, and it's so it's kind of when people blanketly say blanketly, I don't use AI. When they say
yeah,
it drives me bonkers when they say that to me
Yeah,
on social media, and I don't like to get into the argument with people.
yeah.
I also think people are slightly overblowing the idea that it's stealing all the creative work, to be honest.
mm,
I mean, I can see how. there would have been mass scraping and stuff like that. But actually, I think it's moved beyond
Yeah.
Yeah,
stealing
no,
people's
yeah,
work.
yeah.
I think what it's become is a highly efficient way to defraud people, but that's a different problem.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
use a tool called Sumo, which somebody recommended to me, and I ended up finding incredibly therapeutic. But also, it's not a bad training tool because you can use
Mm,
that to turn anything into songs. And
mm,
it's ridiculous and scary how much of a bank of voices and music and everything that it's got. And it again, it
mm,
doesn't get right what you have in your in your brain. And a lot of the AI tools are like this. It helps you create prototypes. And so
Swain's
if
bringing
that
it
can
up on
then be
screen now. Yeah.
used to draw
Mm,
down money. So I don't know if you've done it yet, either of you, but trying to use AI tools now to create a bid is ridiculously fast. And how
mm,
many months and years were people in small charities just burning themselves out by understanding tender documents?
mm,
There's a
mm,
great thread, Swain, about people feeding family text messages into something like or whichever tool, and it's hilarious
Yeah.
because you're just
mm.
making these songs about these
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
chats.
Yeah.
My son and I over Christmas made a musical based on 6-7, and it was just loads of fun over a few
Yeah.
days. Then
Yeah.
we got
Yeah. Yeah.
bored of
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and then
Mm,
this kid's age, the
Yes.
reception kids have all got into it. So now she started
Yeah.
playing these songs because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did one where I said, again, this is one of the companies that's been sued. So actually, their copyright regulations are quite strict and
Mm.
sharp. You can't just say, make it sound like Frozen, but
mm,
you can say, this is to sound aspirational and fun. And
Yeah.
and
mm,
and it's great because it's humorous. As in, like, I did this whole thing where I was pulling ideas from like the producers and everything else. It's like, what would it be like if someone just wrote this musical on AI in a really, really lazy way?
mm.
And it would look like this. And it was amazing because
Well, I
it's
You've
can.
like,
gi-
I
given
can.
me an idea for because I've talked previously about Open Data Camp the musical, so I might have something worked on for that
There's a
before you all
project.
meet in November.
I do think we've probably coming to the end of the show shortly, but I think coming on to a topic where there's play involved and where people are just doing it, you know, to be connected to each other is very
yeah,
much in the spirit of what John
Mm,
Popham was all about. And
I
I'm sure
really loved it.
absolutely.
he'd have been at the forefront of all of this stuff and embracing
Definitely,
it like he
definitely.
embraced
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah. Making it for community. Before we finish, Claire, I just wanted to ask you if you feel, given that we've talked about jobs and kind of people's lives and stuff, do you feel the unions have a good enough grasp of what's happening, or do they need to do work on that as well?
I suspect they do need to do work on it. Again, I'd worry about a very simplistic view, the kind
Mm,
of Luddite, this is just going to take our jobs, we're not engaging with it.
yeah.
Hopefully that it's not that. I actually need it's on my list to do. I need to investigate whether my union actually has engaged with the AI worker thing or not. I don't
Yeah.
know because
Mm,
the branch that
mm,
I've been put in is for the sporting artists, but actually
okay.
it covers the whole media industry.
Mm,
So I've got an email to send to say, hey, I'm doing actually most of the work I'm actually being paid for now is in this field. Is
mm,
and so I suppose it's more likely that we're going to have to do some organizing.
Mm.
mm,
But I think as well, the trade union side is absolutely crucial because
Mhm.
how have people ever made their
yeah,
jobs better? And how
yeah,
have we ever made sure that technology isn't there to
Yeah,
screw us
it's
over?
true.
yeah,
And how
yeah.
have we made sure that the owners, so there's absolute and really quickly, because I know you want to finish, you look at the visions that people like William Morris had, where it was
Mm,
like, and then, Keynes and people said that, where are we at the cusp of a world where we can take a step back, or are we going to be working ourselves half to death
Mm.
and then dying
absolutely.
without any medical insurance?
Yeah,
Honestly, society could go either way. So it's
yeah,
for that kind of strand of people who care about the world and care about the people in it to
Yeah,
shape
yeah,
that, isn't it?
absolutely,
definitely. Yeah.
absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, Claire. We could obviously talk for hours. You're
You
fascinating.
know I could.
We have so much in common and care about the same kind of things. So it's really such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. This show is going to go out on Monday, the 13th of July. So not tonight. But really, thanks a lot for joining us on this lovely day.
Thank
We
you for
hope
having me
everybody is
again.
listening and watching. Have a great week, and we'll see you at the next show. Thank you very much. Bye bye now.